Welcome everybody. Today, our presentation about phrasal verb. We will try to demonstrate several concepts and aspects. So let's start. This is the main slide about phrasal verb, typed and prepared by me, Muhammad Salim Nadi. Here is an outline. It is done mainly for printing issues. It's about the different sections of the presentation. And the first thing to start with is the definition of phrasal verbs. Here what we can say phrasal verb mainly it's a combination of verb and either preposition or adverb or both all together that function as a verb, but it must be considered a phrasal verb when its meaning is different from the combined meanings of the individual words or its constituents. Otherwise, it would be considered as prepositional verb, in which the overall meaning is the result of the combined meaning of both elements, not a new meaning as a phrasal verb should have. I hope this is really informative. Now, let's talk about how we classify phrasal verbs. We have two main classifications, which is meaning classification and grammar classification. Let's start with meaning classification. Here we have three types of different classification of phrasal verb based on meaning, on terms of meaning, let me say that. So let's start with number one, or type number one, transparent. Here what we can say about transparent, these are certain verbs which are simple to comprehend, as it's written here. As you can see, we wrote here some. Let me just take my laser pointer. So as I typed here, phrasal verbs meaning is the sum of constituents. Its constituents, of course, and we can see that there are certain verbs which are simple to comprehend. The meaning of the phrasal verb, for example, come in or go out, is self-explanatory if you are familiar with the words come and in or go and out. So it's easy to guess. Now we have, other than come in and go out, we have play with, run away, get out of, get up, etc. We can give an example for come in, like, do you want to come in for a cup of tea? And for go out, we can say, for example, we don't get out much since we had the children. It's some grammarians believe that it's more of a phrasal prepositional phrase more than it is a phrasal verb, but it's still considered as a first type of a phrasal verb. Type 2 here now is semi-opaque, or sometimes called semi-transparent. It's kind of, let me say that it's a medium to guess. You can't tell the meaning if you have good knowledge of all the elements and you have the ability to contextualize the phrasal verb correctly. Or as I wrote here or type it here, is the meaning is not always always could be identical to the meaning of constituents or the phrasal verb, but it's kind of slightly easy to guess the meaning. Of course, it should be you should have knowledge or familiarity with the words element of the phrasal verb, like see and off in the example here, see and off, or get away with, which we have three um, elements. So we can say its meaning not 100% identical to their components meaning, but in the end it's guessable. So for example, CF, let me give you an example for CF. My parents saw me off at the airport. So here's it's equivalent to farewell, like saying goodbye to someone. And what about get away with? We can say, for example, thieves got away with computer equipment with $30,000, for example. Here it means as avoid punishment. And it's guessable some way. I don't know. It's for me at least. It's not just for me, to be honest. It's for the grammarians. And we can see other examples like come about and get over. It's all have the same thing, which is it is not as easy as transparent, but it's still guessable somehow if you are familiar with the elements of the phrasal verb. The third type here is opaque, which is really the idiomatic one and the idiomatic concept of phrasal verb, which is the most important and the really heavy stuff here we talk about. This is the most difficult one of all to guess its meaning. It's considered the idiom version, as I told you, or phrasal verb. You can't tell its meaning just from its constituent. As I typed here, the meaning of phrasal verb is not the sum of its elements. It's not always, it's always difficult to do unless if the context indicates other. And sometimes it's not like simple verbs that you can indicate mostly from the context. Sometimes even the context can't help to distinguish or identify the meaning of the phrasal verb. You can't tell its meaning just from its constituent, as I told you. It always have a new meaning, different, mostly regarding the meaning of its parts. For example, I typed here putabat. In putabat, I'll give you an example. Let's put it in the context. I don't know if you can understand or not. We put up at motel. We put up at motel. In this one, I think it could be guessable. I think here it has the meaning of stay somewhere, like stay somewhere for a night or so. Sit down here. Sit down. If I give it a context, let me say. He was sent down. He was sent down for armed robbery. It's not that easy, but anyway, it means put someone in prison. Other examples could be like get on with somebody, of course, see to something, etc. Now let's go to the third slide, of course, but with the contents. But let me say this is the second classification, which is a grammar classification. There are four types in this classification of phrasal verb as follows. You can see here. Type 1, intransitive. Intransitive. It is the same as in simple verbs. That can be intransitive, in which it does not require an object to express complete meaning. Example as type, my car broken down. We don't need anything extra to make the sentence meaningful. It's already meaningful. Another example as in the question, when do you get up? No need for object and still the meaning clear. This is for intransitive. Now the second type, transitive. We can consider as the opposite of type 1, the intransitive, in which the meaning of phrasal verb would not be completed unless there is an object. Otherwise it would be ambiguous or even incorrect and we carry no sense. Example from the slide here, she looks after a child. It's equivalent to she take care of that child. Other example, they have called of the meeting, which means they equals to cancel, or they have canceled the meeting. That's it. It's really straightforward and simple structure. Type 3, separable. Separable, let me say, its verb and preposition or adverb can be separated. That's it. Such a phrase verb can be used as in joined forms as well as in separated forms. Some of the intransitive verbs have separable and some of them are inseparable because it works more with transitive, doesn't work with separable, it works with transitive, but does not work that much with intransitive because there is a different in structure. So let's complete from where we start. So some of the I said that some of the transitive verb can be separable or unseparable. As example here, please turn the light on. We can say to change it. We can say for this example here, please turn the light on, or turn on the light. I mean, we can say please turn the light on, or please turn on the light. Both are acceptable. And let's take another example. The people requested to cut down the prices, or the people requested to cut the prices down. Different structure, same meaning. The last one is inseparable. In this case, by the way, they call it inseparable or non-separable phrasal verb. Its verb and preposition or adverb cannot be separated. They remain together always. We can explicit from the example here that we can say you should stay away from bad friends. This is correct, but we can't say you should stay from bad friends away. This is incorrect. Another example for the expression, let me see, what can we say? Like, he is trying to get up, or so he's trying to give up smoking. Accepted structure, but we cannot say that he's trying to give smoking up. This is incorrect. Those are the 4 types of phrasal verb according to the grammar classification. Now let's talk a little bit about importance of phrasal verb. Well, first of all, understanding conversation. Here we talked about some major thing, but the most important thing we talk about here, understanding English conversation smoothly and easily, of course. Here in spoken English, tons of phrasal verbs are used. And to understand the actual meaning of what is said, you need to know what the phrasal verbs mean. You would definitely be missing out on the meaning of so many essential expressions if phrasal verb taken out of the picture. As we're saying, you cannot take phrasal verb out of the picture. You would not understand the conversation, which is the most important thing now, a conversation. The second importance, let me say, nurture. Be more natural, or sound more natural in English. We can say that really there's a common problem that English learners struggle with. It's sounding overly formal in casual conversation, of course, I'm talking. But if you want to speak English comfortably, you need to learn how to vary your vocabulary according to the context, of course. So as mentioned here, phrasal verbs are typical feature of the spoken language, spoken English language, as well as understanding and know how to use, understand and know how to use them, of course, correctly or appropriately, makes a huge difference, without a doubt. Well, the last point of importance I typed here, it's about learn how English is actually spoken. Because part of the reason some English learners sound too formal is that they often choose to learn the single word alternative of the phrasal verb. A lot of the time, the single word alternative is derived from Latin, which might make it easier for speakers to remember. The thing is, the phrasal verb is almost always more common and less formal than the single word alternative. That's why devoting some time to learn phrasal verb is essential for higher levels of fluency and better communication skills in English. Without a doubt, focus on that higher level of fluency and better communication skills, as typed here, is really the solid rock that we will depend on if we want to just be a good speaker, or you're not sure a speaker of English language. Okay, now teaching. How to teach phrasal verb. There are many methods and procedures, however, I will address the main ideas only. 1. Start with the basic. Yes, start with the basic definition and construction of phrasal verbs, so your student can get the baseline, like saying a phrasal verb is a combination of 2 or 3 words, usually a verb and a preposition or an adverb, that create a phrase with a different meaning. The entire phrase acts as the verb in the sense. This is just a simple paragraph that just will do the intended task, to give a simple definition of phrasal verbs. Second, what they have to know that not all verb and preposition or adverb combination are phrasal verb. For a phrase to be a phrasal verb, it must have an entirely new meaning from the 2 or 3 words separately. For example, let me say, I went out of the room. Went out is just a verb and preposition. That literally means that you existed the room. However, in I went out with him, went out means I went out with him, focus. Went out means that you went on a date. This is a phrasal verb because went out doesn't literally mean you existed a place. Okay? Third, some phrasal verb can have a direct object called transitive, as we said earlier in the classification, meaning classification, grammar classification. Others do not need a direct object, we call them intransitive. Transitive need phrasal verb, intransitive doesn't need phrasal verb. And I think we talked about it in classification of grammar terms, in grammar terms. Okay, this one. Some phrasal verb can have a direct object in between their verb and the prepositions. This means they are separable. This one. Inseparable phrasal verb, must stay together or they won't make sense. The only way to tell if one phrasal is separable or inseparable is by trying the sentence both ways and seeing if they both make sense. Let me give you an example. If I say I called John out for being rude, and I called out June for being rude. Both were grammatically. This means that the phrasal verb called out is separable. Called John out or called out John. However, if I say I went through my closet, which is works, while I went my closet through, does not does not mean anything. This means that the phrasal verb went through is inseparable because sentences don't make sense with the phrase broken up. And we talked about it in grammar classification as well. Okay, since sorry, so we will talk about small list of phrasal verb of the day. Yeah, don't overwhelm your students with long lists of words that they have to memorize. When you start teaching phrasal verbs, introduce them slowly. Try starting each class with a list of 5 to 10 phrasal verbs and reviewing their meaning. This way, the students gradually build up a list of phrasal verbs without getting overwhelmed. All right. Okay. Now we have what organization? Yes. Since there are so many phrasal verbs, grouping similar ones together can help students learn better. People learn better with patterns than with random selections. So picking out groups of phrasal verbs that begin with the same word, for example, is a good way to organize a phrasal verb. For example, there is a phrasal verbs that start with the same word, call, is one choice. Then take students through the different meaning of call out, call in, call up, and all the other possible combination. Okay. There are over 2,000 phrasal verbs in English. So it's not possible for them, for the students, or for anyone, any learner, to memorize each one. Rather than having students memorize lists of words, teach them how to identify phrasal verbs from sentence context clues. I mean, we talk about really context and context clues. Show them a sentence and check the phrasal verb. Ask them to give you a definition of the verb based on its use in the sentence. Help the students along by asking questions. Let them figure out the definition. This helps them learn better. Lastly, in the teaching section, if students are confused or lost and can't figure out if a word is a phrasal verb, they can look it up in the dictionary. Phrasal verbs come after the singular verb in the dictionary mostly, unless you have a specialized dictionary for phrasal verbs. So let them use dictionaries when they are first learning phrasal verbs to help them if they get stuck. Okay, so let's take this out. Alright, this is the last section of this presentation. All what I can say is just thanks for your time. I hope this was informative enough for you and anyone else. For any questions or further explanations, email me at aladablasm@gmail.com or go check this really new, lively website, Technology in Teaching. Thanks for you again. And this is a presentation prepared and designed by me, Muhammad Nadi. It's dedicated to the subject technology in teaching, and it's for my instructor in this subject, Mr. Muhammad bin Ismail. I hope he find it really creative and informative. as well for everyone else can see this. Thanks a lot and have a nice day.